I've made hundreds of thousands of pounds from coding in the last few years alone, and today I'm going to show you how to get started with absolutely no experience whatsoever. Coding is not hard, and today I'll prove it. I've taught complete beginners to code, including people in their 60s who now have successful 10k per month businesses. The simple fact is, if you can write an email, you can code. I hear the same 3 excuses all the time. I'm bad at maths, I'm too old, I'm not smart enough. These are all myths. And today I'll give you an actionable plan about how to get started. So in the next few minutes, you'll get a step-by-step guide on how to install and start running Python. You'll get to write your own script, and then I'll show you how to run that script. And by the end, you'll have your very own functioning Python program. So let's get into this and let's start taking some action. Now, in terms of programming languages, I 100% recommend you to start with Python for various different reasons. Not only is it an incredible programming language to learn because it's used across so many different industries and use cases, on the back end, on the front end, and everything in between, but it is also really forgiving for newcomers, which is going to make it a lot more enjoyable and is going to build up your confidence much more whilst learning programming. So if you come to this webpage, which is python.org/downloads, you can basically download all these different versions of Python. At the time of writing, the latest versions are 3.13 and 3.12, so I'd probably recommend you starting with one of those. And what you're going to want to do is come down to this section here, where you're looking for a specific release. Now I want to download 3.12, so I'm going to click on this, Python 3.12.10. This will take me to the release page for this particular version, and if I scroll down to the bottom, I can now install the installer for the operating system that I'm working on. So I'm using a Windows machine, so I'm going to download this one, the Windows installer. Now you really don't need a fancy setup to actually get up and running with Python. All you need is the Python download, which we're doing now, and a code editor. So Python files are no different to any other type of files really on your file system, such as, a text file, a Word document, or an Excel file. The only difference is that a Python file contains Python code, not a spreadsheet or numbers. So you could technically write and manage all of your files just using a text editor, like a notepad for example. But there are much more powerful and useful development environments that you can use which really enhance your productivity. And the best one out there is Visual Studio Code. It looks something like this, so you have a whole bunch of tools and features that you can use. You can add extensions, you can view your code and it highlights it in all different colors to make it much more readable, and there's a whole bunch of AI features you can use as well. So whilst the Python executable is downloading, also come over to here, code.visualstudio.com, and download this for your appropriate machine. I've already got this downloaded, so I'm not going to go through this now. But what I am going to do is I'm going to check on this Python download, and that looks like it's done. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open this executable file up, which will then walk me through the installation process. Now I've actually got a whole bunch of different Python versions installed, so I'm not going to select the upgrade now version. I'm actually going to customize this installation, but you can very easily choose the upgrade now version, or whichever option it gives you where you don't necessarily need to customize it. And if this is a fresh install for you, I would recommend just going with the default settings. But I'm going to go for the customized installation option. I want to install all of these, definitely. And the main thing that I want to change is the location of where this is going to be installed. The reason why is because I've got multiple versions installed. Once again, if this is the only version that you've got installed, then I'd recommend just going with the default settings. So I'm going to choose a specific location, which is going to be here. Okay, and that's now done. So Python is installed. Now I'm going to show you how you can use this Python version to write your very first Python file. Okay, so assuming that you've been able to follow along, you should now have Python installed and you should have Visual Studio Code installed. What we want to do is we want to create a folder on your file system somewhere where we're going to create the new Python file and run that Python file. So go ahead and create that folder somewhere in your documents, and then what you want to do is come to the Visual Studio Code panel, click on Open Folder, and then find the folder that you want to open. So for me, this is going to be over here. Open. Now the code here is very basic, and it's a really simple program to get you up and running and started. And you can download this code for free on the Gumroad page as well, and I'll post a link in the description. But essentially, this is just a very simple rock, paper, scissors game. It will take some input from you. It will then randomize a response in terms of the computer's answer, and then it will tell you whether or not you've won. And it will keep doing that over and over again as many times as you want. So there's a whole bunch of different fundamentals that you'll actually be using in this Python script. I'm not going to go into the details about all of them today, but I will highlight them and just make you aware of them. So you can simply copy and paste this script and put it into a file called main.py. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete this and just walk you through actually creating that yourself. So copy the code, come over to Visual Studio Code over here, click on this button up here, which is the new file button, name it something. Main.py is a good file name. You can call it whatever you want. You can call it rockpaperscissors.py, but main.py is a good file name. And paste the code in here. Okay, now let me close this, and let's zoom in a little bit and explain what's going on. So at the top of any Python file, you typically import any packages that you need. So the way that Python works is that there are some inbuilt functionality that's available within the Python programming language. And then there's a whole bunch of built-in packages that you can also utilize as well, which you don't need to install. They're out of the box, they're ready to go. And then outside of that, if there's extra functionality that you need, for example, to use a machine learning model, then you might need to install a third-party package as well. And the beauty with Python is that pretty much all packages are free and open source. So you don't need to pay for them, but there might be some packages that you need to pay to actually use, such as an LLM, for example. So we're going to be using this random package, and that's going to help us when we are randomizing the response from the computer. So another fundamental is a print statement. When you run this script, when you run this file, a print statement will literally print the following text within the parentheses to the terminal where you're running this code. So to give you an example, let me just comment all of this out. And by the way, a shortcut for commenting in Visual Studio Code, highlight the code that you want to comment, press Control, this is on Windows, and press / and it will comment out all of this code. You know it's a comment because it's got a hashtag at the start of the line. This basically disregards all of this code. So this code is no longer executable. So what you're going to do in Visual Studio Code, click on the terminal button at the top, click on New Terminal. Now a terminal is basically just an input where you can write commands and you can talk to your computer. But in this specific case, we don't want to talk to the computer, and ask it to do something specific. What we want it to do is we want it to run this Python file. So when you open up the terminal, it will open up a terminal at the current directory where you are. So you should be at your folder that you just created, and I'll teach you some commands here. So if you type in ls, that will list all the files that are in your current directory. And we have main.py and readme.py, which is the same list of files as what it shows up here. So that's perfect. Now to run this file, because we've installed Python, to actually use Python, all we need to do is just write the word Python. Now if you type this command and press enter, it will open up an interactive terminal that you can use, and that's not necessarily what we want. What we want is to run this specific file. So I'm going to write Python, and then I'm going to write main.py. So this will use Python to run this Python file. If I run this file, I run this command, see what happens. It prints out these two statements to the terminal, and then it exits. It exits because there's nothing else that's happening here. So the Python file has finished executing and it's done what it's needed to do. So that's great. We can clearly access the Python file. Now let's go through some of the logic in this rock, paper, scissors game. So, as you'd expect, the three choices within the game are rock, paper, and scissors. So what we're going to do is we're going to store this in a list. I'm not going to go into a massive amount of detail about different data types and all that sort of stuff, but maybe I'll do that in another video. This is essentially a list of 3 strings. The first is rock, the second is paper, the third is scissors. We're going to use this later on. So we're declaring it as a variable on line 6. And what's happening here is, in Python, you have this concept of looping, where you can loop over things. So if you have, for example, a list of items, such as this list of items here, clearly just by looking at it, I know that there's 3 items in this list. So this list is something that can be iterated over. So this is an example of an object that can be looped over. For example, if we wanted to perform some sort of calculation or some sort of experiment based on each value in that list, we can do that using a loop, and you could use something called a for loop for that. But what this loop is it's a while loop. So essentially what this means is that this loop will continue executing this block of code, so the code that's within this loop, it will continue executing it until it is told otherwise. And what I mean by being told otherwise is it will continue executing that loop until this condition here, which comes directly after the while statement, is no longer true. Once again, don't get bogged down too much in the weeds of everything that I've just said there. This is going into the detail a little bit more, but essentially this code block here is going to be looped over continuously until I write the word quit in the terminal. So what's happening here? So when this loop starts, it's going to wait for me to provide my choice, either rock, paper or scissors. If I say the word quit, then it's going to exit the program and the program will stop running. If I provide a choice which is outside of these three possibilities, it will come back with an invalid statement saying that I need to choose something else. If it passes those two checks, then it will choose a random value out of these three for the computer, and it will basically compare our two values and tell us who's won. So let's actually give this a go. And the main focus of this is to just get you up and running with your first program. As I said, don't worry too much about all the granular details because we'll go through this in another session. But the purpose of this is to give you the tools to be able to actually run your very first Python program. So let's run it with all of the code available now, nothing commented out. We're going to run python main.py, and let me make this terminal a little bit bigger so you can see. Let's run this. So it welcomes us with the print statements, that's all good. It says type rock, paper or scissors to play. So let's go for rock. Computer chose scissors, so I win. Brilliant. Okay, and as you can see, it's going through the loop. So it's asking me for my choice again. And this is because I haven't exited the program, right? So now let's give it an incorrect choice. Let's say trousers. Invalid choice, please choose rock, paper or scissors. Okay, fine, let's go for scissors. I lost. Okay, fine. Let's do one more, paper. Lost again, damn it. This is actually quite quite addictive. Now I just want to win every single time. Okay, rock has won again, cool. Alright, now I'm happy, now everything's done. Now I want to quit. So because of the logic that we built into this code here, if the user choice is equal to this exact string here, quit, then it will exit the program. So I'm going to type quit, and you can see it gives me a goodbye message, which comes from this print statement here, and it exits the program. And there it is. If you've been able to follow along with this, hopefully this has given you an insight into what a Python script looks like, how to set up Python, and most importantly, how to run your very first Python file. There is no denying that the world of coding has changed and is changing rapidly right now due to the uprisal of AI. But the highly essential skills of a programmer are highly sought after today and will continue to be in the future, but maybe just in a slightly different way. At this stage, the most important thing that you can do is to build momentum and keep building up your confidence. There are a lot of concepts that we went through whilst building that Python file, and you are definitely not expected to understand it all right now. But what is most important is that you took action and hopefully you had a functioning running script at the end of it. Now, keep this momentum up and the granular details of the Python language will come to you in time through experience. So if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe, and let me know what else you'd like to see in the comments. I'll see you soon.